My colleague Suyash is standing by. Suyash, I'm looking at Sensex and Nifty both opening at a flat.
Yes, Shweta. So Indian markets opened in the negative territory today, tracking cues from the global markets. You know, the US markets in the US closed on a flattish note yesterday. European markets were rather upbeat, but Asian markets as well, logged some losses. So Indian market seems to be tracking that trend, and it opened lower. But since then, we have seen BSE and Sensex have paired some losses, but they are still in the negative territory. Sensex is currently down 0.17% at 66,151 levels, while Nifty is down 0.15% at 19,630.
All right, what are the big results we are tracking this morning?
Shweta, some of the big results that are going to come in today are Exide Industries, Apar Industries, Equitas Small Finance Bank, DCB Bank, eMudra, Fino Payments Bank, and India Grid Invit Fund.
All right, more banking stocks there. But since we continue to track banking stocks, particularly Indian Bank came up with its results. PSU banks at large so far have done particularly well. Not just the stock performance, but also the numbers that have come out.
Definitely, Shweta. PSU banks have outperformed their private peers. The asset quality has improved substantially, and even today we can see Nifty Bank is currently trading in the negative territory. It's down about 0.4%. Meanwhile, PSU Bank is among one of the top gainers. It's up about 0.7%. That has been the case, in the last 3 or 4 weeks. PSU banks has been one of the major outperformers in the recent rally, and it has contributed and helped Nifty and Sensex scale new peaks.
All right, I'll come back to you, Suyash. Krishna Kumar is also standing by. Krishna, good morning. What are the big cues we are tracking on markets this morning?
Right, markets, we obviously, you've seen the US Fed rate hike that happened. That's the biggest cue for the markets as far as not just this morning, but like across from going forward is concerned, because we were thinking that there's going to be a pause on the entire rate hike cycle, and sort of India sort of carrying on from there on. So from what I understand, it is the interest rate cycle which will be one of the biggest, apart from earnings, of course, but it's back in the middle of earnings season. So individual stock movement will depend upon, the kind of earnings that the individual company and the sector, in a sense, puts out. But for the markets as a whole, Shweta, it's going to be all about the interest rate cycle going forward.
All right. I would want to go back to markets, and we will, of course, keep coming back. But as of right now, I'm looking at Sensex down by about 182 points, Suyash, and Nifty is down approximately 18 to 20 points. What are going to be the big triggers through the day that you'll be tracking?
So Shweta, FII flows have, FIIs had been a major driver of the recent rally. Their flows have rather subdued over the last couple of weeks. Foreign institutional investors, as a matter of fact, sold about 4,000 crore worth of equities yesterday, and FIIs have been cutting stake in IT companies, in the last quarter or so. So in Infosys, in the June quarter, the foreign institutional investors have cut stake from 35.08% to 33.43%. Same is the case with TCS. Their foreign institutional investors' stake fell from 12.72% to 12.46% in the June quarter. Now, this was the 11th consecutive quarter of sell-off by foreign institutional investors in the stock of TCS. The Tech Mahindra was another one where their holding has reduced by about 100 basis points from 26.87% to 25.67%. So, foreign institutional investors, it seems, are at least selling, are disappointed by the results of the IT majors, and they are offloading some of that stake.
All right, Suyash, appreciate you taking time out this morning. We are going to shift focus now to another interesting, important story that we are tracking, and that is by the way of banknotes. Clarification that has come in from Reserve Bank of India, Krishna, that a banknote with a star symbol is still valid. Don't fall for chatter on social media.
Right, and that's because the chat on social media was that this could not be legal tender. And what is the star doing in a normal note? So a lot of confusion regarding it, and the RBI essentially putting an end to all that confusion and all that chatting on social media, saying that the star symbol is an indication that it is a replaced or a reprinted banknote. for whatever reason, for damage, for wrong printing, for whatever reason, when a note with a particular serial number has been redone, reprinted, redone, then there is a star symbol put on the serial number panel of that note. Every note has a serial number, right? And as you see in those graphics, there's a star symbol that is put in between the serial number of the note. That can lead many people to believe maybe this is a fake note, or maybe this note is not valid, But the fact of the matter is, it's a completely valid note. It's a purely it's a process that the RBI follows whenever there a note that is already printed with a particular serial number is being replaced in the market for whatever reason, because of a damage to the note or some printing mistake on that note. That's when the star symbol is being put. So this is a symbol that's been put by the Reserve Bank of India. So people don't need to worry. And it's an official clarification as well as come from the Reserve Bank of India that that's all this star symbol means. It doesn't have any more connotation to it, and then it's free to go ahead and use these notes just like any other note.
All right, so important clarification that's come in from Reserve Bank of India. Please use these notes. Do not fall for what you read on social media. They're as valid as any other legal tender out there. Moving on to, if you're not wanting to pay through your, actual physical notes and you want to pay through digital money, because that's the nature of the game now, Krishna, digital payments have grown by as much as 13.24% in financial year 23. A story that we continue to discuss, adoption of, digital currency, and not just adoption of digital currency, but overall usage of UPI, usage of your Google Pay, Paytm, whichever medium that you use to transact through UPI are at an all-time high, and the numbers there indicative of that growth.
Absolutely. UPI is certainly a miracle as far as India is concerned, as far as the world is concerned. India, the world's largest country, people in the world's largest country are taking to digital payments like no one else, and speed is what is important here. You're looking at the growth, crores of transactions in a month. That's how big the UPI is. That's how the traction for UPI has been in India. The adoption of UPI has been in India, and you're seeing this for the financial year. Digital payments swelling over 12%. Good number, great number, but I still think that all of these are basically, a step in the right direction, and one more step being put forward. Many more steps will be put forward, and these numbers will rise even further. Shweta, what we're looking at is the initial period of adoption of UPI, great speed and pace with which Indians have adopted UPI, but I think there's still lots more room left, lots more headroom left, lots more to be tapped as far as the Indian market is concerned. So I think the only way from here is up and up.
All right, so only way from here is up. Interestingly, the RBI's digital payment index stood at 395.57 at the end of March 2023 compared to 377.46 in September of 2022. Now remember, the RBI DPI index has increased across all parameters driven in payment infrastructure, payment performance across the country over this period. All in all, India moving towards digital payments and at a rate or at a pace that is incomparable. If you look at data that comes in by the way of digital payments in last 2 years, we will track that story. But another interesting story, Krishna, that is coming in, and again something we continue to talk about here, that is internationalization of rupee. Another step that the government of India is now taking is by the way of developing India's own SWIFT-like system. What does that mean?
Right, it is a system where on digital you can do settlements very soon. It's you've seen the SWIFT system operate across the world. Even with Russia for oil payments. So in that sense, the SWIFT-like protocol is the government planning is another step as far as the globalization of the rupee is concerned. We're looking at rupee-based deals the Indian government wants to do with any country when they're buying oil or anything for imports. That's one way of doing it. This is also including rupee in the global settlement system. A new system to help process trade settlement as well. The SWIFT system essentially is about trade settlements. And rupee being the currency in those trade settlements. So far it's not, but now if you can include rupee in these SWIFT trade settlements, then that is a great way of taking it. Just the way a dollar note or a dollar as a currency is being used for trade settlements between two countries who don't even have dollar as their own currency. The hope is that eventually one fine day countries which though are not India will also use rupee as their currency for trade, and especially to start with India for all the global trade it does. It will be amazing if we can pay for all of it with rupee. We can strike all those deals with rupee. That's the future that we are looking at going forward. Eventually, that is, we're taking baby steps towards it, and this is another step in that direction.
All right, and it's interesting because India has been trying to internationalize rupee now for a while. There are talks on with Russia. We're already not transacting in dollars, but through this system, bilateral trade could now be settled. If it comes to fruition, bilateral trade between countries, India and any other country, could be settled in rupee. It's a far-fetched technology. It's something that is in works at the moment. Is there some sort of timeline that we can attest to it? I understand we have some very preliminary information coming in. We know that a expert committee of bankers is exploring options, is expected to submit its findings to the government by August.
Right. Once the finding is submitted in August, that's just the timeline for the expert committee to submit its findings. It will be a while before these things can take off. It's not that simple, Shweta. This is the Indian government, India's effort at internationalizing the rupee. We'll have to see the kind of response that we get and the kind of growth that we can get. For now, this is like a feasibility study. Can the rupee be used in swift trade settlements globally? So what the expert committee will do is to see how practical this is going to be, and if not, what are the steps to be taken to make it practical. That this is a preliminary study. This is a feasibility study. We'll have to see the findings of the study will essentially tell us how soon can rupee be used in swift trade settlements across the world.
And since we continue to talk about financial transaction, interesting story that's also coming in from Finance Ministry, that is by the way of ATM frauds that have now risen approximately 65%. And this is data, of course, from 2022. So we don't know how and what the data is going to be from 23, but a 65% jump in financial frauds, ATM frauds particularly.
Right, ATM frauds we're looking at hacking, and we're looking at your online payments under vulnerability. ATM cards have been vulnerable for a very, very long time right now. And I guess the thieves have really caught up with all the card technology and the ATM technology. And that's the reason why you're seeing this quantum jump between the years 2021 and 2022. In these days of cyber fraud, the level of protection that a debit card or any card that you have has, is something that's often forgotten because, we all have moved on to UPI. Most of us don't use the debit cards to go to an ATM to withdraw money. So we're probably thinking that we're going to a cardless future. That's what we're going towards, Shweta. But if that's going to be a cardless future, that's the future. The present still involves a lot of cards, debit cards, credit cards, forex cards, or prepaid cards, all kinds of stuff. So the level to which these cards can be protected, the usage of these cards can be protected, there is clearly a gap, there's a lacuna over there. There's a huge delta over there, probably because all the focus has been on avoiding cyber fraud. Password-based fraud and hacking-based frauds. But this is a card that we're talking about, a physical card that we're talking about. The same way you have the currency note. The currency note, so much technology goes into it to make sure that the currency note is not, you can't fake that note, you can't do anything with that note, from using a thread and the ink and so many things that go into a currency note to keep it safe. Same way, I'm wondering,
Krishna, it's interesting. Right, it's interesting because the data that's come in, and the data was of course reported to a parliamentary committee. We're also talking about financial frauds with respect to UPI. NPCI, the organization that operates UPI, says that on an average, 2,000 customers are reporting cyber frauds daily. Now, and these are just reported numbers. Imagine the number of people who are going through cyber frauds or are a part of it, are a victim of it, who are not able to report it because they don't know what channels to report it to or whose doors to knock on. This is a problem. It's a pressing problem. It's as big as pesky calls. You've got people calling you now, asking you to transfer money, not just directly, but by the way of, oh my, your father called me and he owes me some money, and so on and so forth. Or we owe you some money. Can you click on this link? The modus operandi has become very interesting, very innovative. Just the other day, in fact, I shared a screenshot with my colleagues of how somebody tried to message me, where they basically said that I am so and so and I need your help, and could you help me transfer? And they had someone's profile picture was a well-renowned person, a CEO of a company, and an average individual tend to fall for it, fall for the gimmick that the other side presents to you, and then end up transferring money or end up transferring, whatever token amount that they're asking for in hopes of getting it back, never get it back.
Right, obviously the kind of frauds, they're getting innovative on a daily basis, and they involve both phone calls and what they can do with their passwords spent online. And these are extremely dangerous signals and signs, because even as Indians are placing trust in digital payments, and these are the kind of information that can really shake somebody's trust in UPI, because in UPI invariably a person's bank account is connected to the UPI app, which means that any form of hacking, any kind of hacking, leaves your entire bank account open to a criminal to swindle the entire sum of money. Pesky calls, yeah, sure, you get irritated and you cut the call, or report a spam, or use Truecaller to start with. You can be vigilant, and it's an irritation. And sometimes these calls can also tell you the ones that you're talking about, where they can use a call to commit a cyber fraud. This is where we're looking at the cusp of telecom and technology being used for the greatest of frauds possible. And these are extremely dangerous signs, because people's hard-earned money are there in these bank accounts, and it begins, like pesky calls, with vigilance from people. Until we know how to deal with this, and I don't think the authorities know exactly to deal with all kinds of frauds that are mushrooming. So to start with, you have got to protect yourself. There is no authority, there is no entity that you can turn around and say, why can't they do it for me? You have to do it for yourself.
Absolutely.
Make sure that your UPI app is not connected to your salary account. Make sure that when you use a card in an ATM, you are very vigilant for the time you finish the transaction. Don't leave the receipt slip inside your ATM, or don't make sure your bank account balance is shown on the ATM after your transaction. Little things that you can do to protect yourself. I mean, you want to be in the big bad world of technology, you've got to be adept at it as well. You can't be a little child saying, hey, I used UPI, I lost money, please, government has to come and help me now.
Right.
People can't be children about these things anymore.
You've got to be prudent
and aware.
Absolutely, you've got to be very, very prudent in your day-to-day habits, and I think some very interesting points that you brought to fore, Krishna, specifically with respect to how secretive you've got to be around the money that you have, your ATM pin, things that we would laugh off just about a couple of years ago, because who's going to go back and figure out or copy your ATM or get your ATM pin and then try and swindle you out of money, because those were far-fetched events. But now it's coming home, and it's happening to everybody. It's happened to me thrice in last 1 month, so I can only imagine what's happening to people who actually fall for it. It is an important story. Perhaps we can delve deeper into later part of the day. But moving on to another story that we're tracking, and that's coming in by the way of India's favorite brands. Amit, I've grown up eating Parle G biscuits. I don't know about you. And Parle, not just for me particularly, I mean, I have no particular inclination, but biscuits are my favorite. And it appears that everybody's favorite, because Parle has emerged and remains top unbeaten FMCG brand in India as of today.
Yeah, and of the survey that was done for 400 brands, you would expect a brand from the stable of HUL or Colgate.
ITC or Colgate.
It comes from Parle. The bigger thing is 7 out of 10 brands out of these that were homegrown. Parle used to be also synonymous once upon a time with Thumbs Up. That went away. But yeah, the only brand from the HUL stable in the top 5 was their Clinic shampoo. So that's how good or bad, whatever. And this growth has happened despite a slowdown, because Parle, most of their products are in the low value plank. So despite that, it's the most wanted brand. Not just Parle G, Fruity is still there, and they're still marketing their other brands. So it's something to be proud of, maybe, because I mean Parle to us is as old as HLL used to be. Now it is HUL or Colgate. So whichever way you look at it.
All right, Krishna. Parle ji, as I said, I've grown up eating the biscuit, but I didn't realize it's that favorite for people in India. The survey here proves, of course, that it continues to remain one of the most favorite brands. And I think it's particularly important to point out this is a homegrown brand. So something that, you know, it's a laurel, it's a laurel for us, a feather on our cap.
Absolutely, and look at the time it has lasted. It's a time-tested brand as well. I'm extremely happy that Parle G, which reaches Parle as a brand, which reaches some of the most common Indian consumer. And they've also managed to put out aspirational products for the most common Indian consumer. Prices have been kept for the average Aam Aadmi of India. So Parle as a brand has been keeping in track with what's been happening with the average Indian, the average Bharatiya, and delivering products. Varied products at the best price points to them, not just today, not just to our generation, but 3 generations before us. So, this is a testament to the kind of brand that Parle has been, not just today, but for a very long time, despite the influx. Bear in mind, Parle has been in existence in India before re-liberalization. And post-liberalization, we've seen the kind of, FMCG brands that have just entered Indian market, have flooded Indian market, different strategies, huge marketing budgets. They come with the pedigree of sometimes introducing brands which have already been famous in foreign markets and international markets and bringing them to India. And so they come, and they market it as that, an international brand now in India and all that. None of that seemed to have shaken some of the best Indian brands, be it Parle or Fruity for that matter. I'm just happy that some of the things that I grew up with in 80s India continues to top the charts in 2020s.
Let's quickly also take a look at financials from Parle at this point. In financial year 22, Parle products, which include brands like Parle G, Monaco Melody, crossed 2 billion in annual revenue, becoming the first packaged food company in India to breach that mark. The 5 rupee a pack Parle G value has grown, and it continues to grow despite a low value money plank. Despite what you get, the package is shrinking, the packet is becoming smaller and smaller, but the price remains constant. It continues to be one of the most respectable favorite brands for many Indians. But we're going to move on now, and a story again coming in from two-wheeler industry. It appears, Krishna, that after a momentary break or a halt post increase in prices of electric two-wheelers, the sales momentum is back on track.
Well, there is a need clearly for electric vehicles and electric two-wheelers in this country. Bear in mind, electric cars are still out of the reach of so many middle-class Indians because of just the price difference. All electric cars come with around 20 to 30% price premium as compared to a regular car, and hence, and regular car prices have gone up. So that makes the EV cars even more out of reach, and only within the reach of the upper middle class of Indians. Whereas two-wheelers are the staple of of even the lower strata of Indians, the lower middle class, the middle class. Two-wheelers attract a huge Indian audience. And therein lies a huge opportunity to convert a majority of them into electric vehicle consumers. And that is the reason why you've seen like a company like Ola set up the world's largest electric two-wheeler plant in Krishnagiri district in Tamil Nadu as well. Of course, albeit those plants and some of Ola's own EVs, scooters have run into issues, but these are burning pangs as far as India is concerned. If India wants to go towards a renewable energy way and ensure mass adoption of renewable energy, electric two-wheelers are the best way to go. So sales might come down in a particular month, might go up in a particular month, but they're clearly the future going forward.
All right. Let's quickly explain to our viewers why sales were down in the month of June. It was essentially on the back of the fact that electric two-wheelers became more expensive. Because FAME 2 was revised, the subsidy that was offered on electric two-wheelers and upfront reduction in cost 40% was brought down to 15% for at least 7 of the 13 existing EV players. For the other 7, subsidy was taken off entirely because on the back of course, allegations that they did not adhere to localization norms, that they were supposed to have local batteries, but they continue to import batteries. Now, that is a case that is still currently pending. Some of those 7 companies are saying we're going to pay back the subsidy that we got over the course of last 2 years. It's a case that we continue to discuss here, Amit, essentially. But the overall plight of electric two-wheeler industry was that we will not clock same numbers anymore because two-wheelers have become more expensive. So after an abysmal show in the month of June, we're now given to understand July will close on better numbers. At least 55,000 units are expected to be sold. It's 28th. We still have 2-3 more days to go. But there's some sort of rebound that we're looking at.
June was the worst month for electric two-wheelers in almost 11 months. So prices jumped 20 to 30%. And this 20% jump, while it is good, it's starting from a very low base, 46,000 units in the month of June. It's a very small number for a country the size of India. It has jumped to 55,000 units, as we say. But despite that, the 5 million mark, that target that Niti Aayog has set for this category by 2025 is a long shot by with the way the things are going. At least the SMEV believes so. They think if we touch 1.5 million by 2025, we'll be good. So that target is going to be elusive. But yeah, it's a recovery. It's a recovery from a very low base. So 20% looks big. But yeah, it's a start. Let's hope it catches up as time goes by.
All right, let's hope it catches up. Remember, it continues to be a pain point for a lot of two-wheeler EV makers. Some of them you spoke to yourself. Before I move on from this story, we've also had an opportunity to talk to Government of India, Amit.
Yes.
And you've spoken to officials at Niti Aayog. Their plans are different. They believe that it's now time to not just incentivize sale, but make it lucrative for people to own an EV, which is have more charging infrastructure, have more e-mobility roads out there that are friendly for electric two-wheelers, etc., etc. So, I still remember, because we had made a documentary on sale of electric two-wheeler and why it's the end of game or end of road for them, where when you spoke to Niti Aayog officials, they had a very contrary point of view. Their point of view was, you can't just make it cheaper because you want people to own it. You've got to make it lucrative for people to own it.
Yeah. So they are now concentrating or planning to concentrate on infrastructure development around the EV universe. And also their concentration is not very much only on two-wheelers. Two-wheelers saw a slump, but they are looking at all sorts of EV buses. They have done the numbers have done well for them. Three-wheelers, their numbers seem to have done well for them. Cars, is a category on its own and probably premium, as Krishna mentioned. So they are looking at the entire universe, and they have limited money to spread. They try to do a demand pull sort of thing in the first 2 FAME exercises. In the next one, probably it will be concentrated more towards infrastructure development around this universe.
So essentially, the next FAME, if it's envisaged in a different way, yes, it's going to be around building infrastructure. Remember, a PLI scheme already continues to exist for helping manufacturing of two-wheelers. Whether there's going to be an incentive, not just on the supply side, but also on the demand side, which is consumer side, yes, we'll have to wait and watch out for whether there's going to be rebranding of FAME 2. But right now it continues to exist, and of course the incentive that was given has been revised downward, but sales are expected to pick up once again. We want to move on to another story that we're tracking, and that is coming by the way of aviation industry. We now know that AirAsia India will operate under a new brand name. What would that be?
They essentially want to run as Air India Express. So they have mentioned their willingness to want to do that. AirAsia has received approval as well from Civil Aviation Regulator DGCA to operate its flights under the Air India Express brand. And it has said that the AIX Connect operating as AirAsia India and a subsidiary of Air India has received regulatory approvals to operate flights under the Air India Express branding. So that's what they're looking to do with that.
Until now, AIX Connect operated under the brand name of AirAsia India. Both companies, of course, are subsidiary of Air India.
Yeah. So it's basically an integration of Air India AIX Connect and AIX Limited. And the approval allows flights of both to be marketed, distributed and operated under a common brand name, that is AirAsia Express. AirAsia Express, right now AIXL operates flights from 20 Indian cities to 14 regional international destinations. So it's a you have probably you have Singapore and Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur and all those flights happening in this. So that integration has happened. It will be one name that will be, the parent company will be one and the brand name will be slightly different from what it is right now.
So no substantial sort of impact, at least on people and their daily lives, especially who take up AirAsia?
No, it is a branding exercise from what I can, and book exercises or exercise of integrating two companies where separate books were probably maintained. Now it is one, AIXC and AIXL.
All right, so it's just going to be one company now. But we're going to move on. A story that is getting a lot of traction that we know of, and that is rice. Non-Basmati rice. I mean, we don't have figures for Basmati rice, but non-Basmati rice, export of which was banned from India. And remember, India is a major export player when it comes to white rice. We know that NRIs are now hoarding rice. Every rice lover out there not living in India is worried about rice prices, which are shooting up, because India has a 40% share of export basket. Now that has come down to zero as India tried to improve its own, existing rice gallows that we have, also on the back of the fact that prices were going up. We now know prices have come down as much as 4,000 rupee a ton. We don't know whether customers are going to get it for any cheaper than what they are at the moment, but it is hurting Indians living abroad.
Particularly the South Indians.
Okay.
And the brand in question, or the category in question, is the Sona Masuri, which is consumed mostly by South Indians. Their US requirement is 6,000 tons a month. Now the US already has stocks of 12,000 tons. Another 18,000 tons are in transit, so they are on their way to. So they have stocks enough for 3 to at least 6 months. So this fear of families in the US of hoarding Sona Masuri were basically uncalled for and unnecessary. So they have stocks, and by that time the situation will ease out, it will plateau out. The rice from other countries like exporters like Thailand and Vietnam has also jumped 30% per ton. So 5% broken rice is up to $572, up from $534 before the ban.
Okay.
25% broken is 547 after the ban. It was 512 before the ban. But
so there's enough stock, basically.
There's enough stock, but it's mostly the one brand which is most consumed and by a huge diaspora of South Indians. That's the Sona Masuri. I'm sure Krishna will have something to say about that.
Absolutely. Krishna, all people from south of India living abroad are wondering whether they'll be able to get their humble rice for afternoon. Sona Masuri particularly, for afternoon or for their dinner at all. US says don't worry, exporters say don't worry, we have enough stock to last for 3 to 6 months. So while stocks and buffers are not swelling up as usual, there is no need to panic just as yet.
No, absolutely. There is absolutely no need to panic. Amit was right about it. This entire thing is uncalled for, so to speak. Holding of any product in the modern day by people is just absolutely disappointing, to say the least. When traders do it and hike prices, we get all worked up saying, oh my God, the system is wrong. Why do I have to pay so much money? Blah, 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 blah. And here we are as NRIs. Let's talk about them for a second. They are supposedly, superior to us Indians, resident Indians who've gone abroad, making money in dollars and pounds, supposedly smarter than us. They speak with an accent and they come home for holidays and talk about how that they are so used to such a high standard of living and such modern ways of living that coming back to India makes them feel all a little uncomfortable. Look at what they're doing. Panic buying means nothing. Basically, we should not look at NRIs as like highly educated or better people than resident Indians. They're just people who just went to another country because they can't fend for themselves here, and they found a job. They're good for them. They made a lot of money. God bless them.
They
but
still like their food.
Them sitting in US and UK and hoarding rice, that's a comedy which is not all that funny. And it all essentially began, I'm sure, because their relatives in India told them that India is banning non-Basmati rice exports. And that sort of set the panic trigger going. And like, oh my God, what is going to happen to me? See what they happen. They all talk about the greatness of whichever country they live in. But what they want is rice. So for all the sophistication.
I'm not sure if all NRIs are going to agree with you bashing them up like that, Krishna. I'm not sure if they're going to be they're all going to be in agreement with you bashing them up.
I'm sure I'm not in agreement with them. When I saw all those long queues in America waiting for rice, it's the same thing on a Black Friday sale. When you see all these people rushing into the shop like mad people, and you sort of think that are these educated people? So, same questions I have when people are hoarding things, and when they are in a developed country and know better, why are they hoarding things?
All right. Why are they hoarding? Important question. No need to hoard rice just as yet. It's like similar to North Indians hoarding tomatoes the moment they started getting cheaper. I wouldn't go so far as to say that. Hoarding is a problem, no matter who you are, no matter where you live.
When you are outside India, and I can tell you from first personal experience, you like things Indian. You crave for things Indian. So I can empathize with all the Indians outside who just the idea of not having their brand of rice for their daily meals, what they must be going through. So give it. They like their Indian stuff.
All right. They clearly do, of course, like their Indian food more, as a result of which they've started hoarding in a fear or in a panic-like situation where they feel that they may not be able to get their hands on their favorite rice in a couple of months or weeks' time. But let's move on. And let's move on internationally to a story that's coming in by the way of US GDP growth numbers. GDP growth accelerating to nearly 2.4% in the second quarter. Good numbers there as far as expectations is concerned.
Yes, and it started in springtime, and it is up to 2.4% in the second quarter, up from 2% in the first quarter. So it has been rising steadily. It is on the back of investments in manufacturing and consumption. Spending rose 1.6%. Goods are up 30% from 2017. The growth in goods slumped in 2020-2021 to below 10% growth. Services are up above 10%, which went down to minus 10% during the pandemic times. So things are looking. Tech companies who were laying off during the same time, people in tens and thousands of employees, they seem to be a very small percentage of the total base. Housing sector was in deep stress. Despite that, consumer prices were up 2.6% during this time, but in the first quarter they were 4.1%.
Okay.
So all these things are looking good for them. And one more thing that we should look at, which India looks at, that we are getting manufacturing and we are a developing country. Manufacturing investment has been the most in the US in almost 4 decades. So even a developed country like the US is getting manufacturing back to its shores.
All right.
And that is where this whole growth is riding. People are calling it Bidenomics.
Bidenomics, interesting term there, similar to what we call back home Modinomics. But essentially, this growth riding on the back of manufacturing, Krishna, is important because it allays fears of stagflation. We know inflation is higher than what Feds would like it to be. There was a rate hike just about a day ago, 24 hours ago India time, and now growth coming in at over 2%, 2.4% is good news because it allays fears of stagflation. There is inflation, but there's also growth, so that's good news.
So absolutely. Unfortunately, global equities have fallen ever since that piece of news have come out. Markets are down across the world because of 2 rate hikes that have happened. Yes, the GDP data from the US is very good. and it's good for the US economy, should send better figures. But what has happened is that with that inflation not being under the levels, bear in mind, according to the US Federal Reserve, the inflation is double of its target. It wants inflation in the US to be 2% or less. Right now, it's over 4%. So that is the reason why you witness that rate hike from the US Federal Reserve, the American Central Bank. And then that was followed up by a rate hike by the European Central Bank as well, when we in the European Union. So two of the biggest, most developed economic blocks have gone ahead with the rate hikes and not paused on their rate hike cycle. And that has spooked markets, just to put things in perspective. But in the meanwhile, the good news is that the US economy has grown at nearly 2.5% and mainly driven by consumer spending. And also by business investments, when more businesses in America are willing to invest and expand. So these are great signs as far as the US economy is concerned, and should send out good signals about the global recovery post-pandemic. And I'm really hoping that the inflation news sort of wears off, and the news about the strength of the US economy and the increased spending by state and local governments in the US, all of this leads to a sustained recovery for the global economy, and specifically speaking India, and also that benefiting India and its global trade as well.
All right. Inflation, of course, continues to be a worry. Inflation way higher than the growth rate in the US, not just in the US, but also in Europe, where ECB, the European Central Bank, has also raised interest rates. Inflation is going to be a menace that many countries are going to continue to exist, and they'll continue to fight, not just here in India, but in the US, in Europe, all across the world. So inflation becoming one of the major sort of challenge for global economies.
Having said that, consumer prices in the second quarter rose only 2.6%. They rose 4.1% in the first quarter in the US. And personal income, after adjusting for taxes, rose 2.5% in the second quarter. So personal income, the net income, cash in the hands of people in the US is rising consistently, and therefore the spending, and therefore the positive sentiment towards investment, because the markets are growing.
All right. So consumer spending continues to rise in US. We will, of course, keep tracking all those details globally as well as here in India. Thanks very much for watching.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it. It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. Streaming now.
मैं इमरान अहमद खान नियाजी सबके दिल से हल्फ उठाता हूँ.
When Imran Khan came initially into politics, he thought his personal popularity would be sufficient for him. It didn't happen.
The retired military generals are openly saying that Imran Khan is a better choice.
Imran Khan may have bitten a bit too much, more than what he can chew.
Implosion. This and more. Streaming on world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Download now.
इंजीनियरिंग कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि सभी लोग कर रहे हैं. Coaching is now starting from grade 3, 4, 5, 6.
कोटा जाने वाली बीच राह में आधे टेस्ट देके हैं सिलेक्शन की चाह में.
ऑल इंडिया का बच्चा कोटा जाता है.
This rat race is for rats, not for humans. So why should we even be a part of it?
The Rat Race. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Download now.
Kashmir and movies together were magic. A magic that gave us Shammi Kapoor and Sharmila Tagore's Kashmir Ki Kali in 1964, Jangli in 1961, Roti, Daag, Kabhi Kabhi, Bobby, Janwar, as well as Bemisal.
सिनेमा और कश्मीर का बहुत गहरा रिश्ता है, घनिष्ठ जिसे हिंदी में कहते हैं।
इतनी खूबसूरत ये तस्वीर है, मौसम बेमिसाल बेनजीर है, ये कश्मीर है।
This was a love letter across the Dal Lake, the snow-capped mountains of Gulmarg, the majestic Chinars, and the beauty of Pahalgam. This was Kashmir in all its glory in 70 mm silver screens across India and the world. Terrorist groups, bombs and grenade attacks left millions dead, displaced, with shattered silver screens across Kashmir.
10 अप्रैल 1993 की बात है जब ये इलाका सब जल गया।
Today, after 32 years of conflict and terror, it's a new dawn for Kashmiris. The first multiplex in the valley, Inox, has risen from the ashes of the cinemas lost to rekindle the same love of Kashmir and its cinema halls in a young generation that has never had the movie watching experience in a theatre.
Cinema in Kashmir is as old as the Bollywood itself. The first theatre in Kashmir opened, that's Palladium itself, in 1932.
Some of the most romantic films have been shot here. जब फूल खिले, आरज़ू. जब फूल खिले had Mahmood playing a houseboat owner, a comic, of course, character. His iconic signature song from that movie is still etched in the memory of that generation. Ya ilahi mitna jahan di dadre dil.
सरजमीन हिंदुस्तान को बादशाह खान का सलाम।
इसी पैलेडियम सिनेमा के आगे यहाँ इसका शो और इसका लोगों का आना जाना यहाँ तांता बंधा रहता था। इतनी भीड़ होती थी कि लोगों को कंट्रोल करने के लिए पुलिस बुलाया जाता था।
There were threats, there were dictates from everyone. It's not only the militants and separatists, everyone. The first dictate was published in local newspapers in August, I think 18th of August 1989. Those days, a number of organizations used to be in a campaign against the cinema, against every entertainment media, including beauty parlors, these audio kiosks and everything, whatever was there. They thought that this fashion and everything, this should be banned, it should not be there.
It's not just films. There were no sports facilities. There were no malls. So imagine a youth growing up with no avenues of entertainment. It's crazy. I can't even imagine living in such an environment.
It is really tragic and sad that, when people don't allow something very normal, which is around the world. You go to Dubai, they have cinema halls, for God's sake. You go everywhere else, they enjoy entertainment. Everybody wants to be entertained. Why not? What else do we have in life?
कैसी हो तुम फिरदौस? एक साल से आवाज नहीं आई। कैसी हो तुम फिरदौस? चिनार कैसा है? शिकारे कैसे हैं? कैसी हो तुम फिरदौस?
Through 60s, 70s and 80s, and when in perhaps 89, 90 the cinemas ended, it returned to the radio. Radio was that a place where people used to throng to get the latest songs from the Bollywood and, of course, the latest news bulletins. And they used to converge on street corners where they used to have the Kashmiri tea and finally discuss the latest politics. The common Kashmiri's heart beats for Bollywood. Even though it was denied to them for more than 30 years, they kept in touch, perhaps through radio and later perhaps through internet as well, to get the latest songs and travel far and wide from Jammu to Delhi and perhaps to Bombay as well to go to the cinema halls and watch the latest films.
Our grandfather, our father, mornings when they would be ready for their exams, they would not for a single day miss the advertisements on the radio. The radio would talk about forthcoming films, their film, their cast, their storylines.
So why should we only talk about the last 30 years? Why can't we talk about tomorrow? They also gave me the credit that if anybody can do it, you can do it. So I probably also got pumped up with that.
In our hearts, we made a promise to the people of Kashmir that we're going to show you a film here, you know, like we're going to make sure you sit in the auditorium and you see a movie how it's supposed to be seen.
I believe we are 10, 15 years too late already. Somebody 10 years ago should have taken this leap of faith. Policy making and leadership is all about taking leaps of faith. You can't be reactive. You can't play the safe game every single time.
The first day we started showing movies here, I had a lady come up to me and kiss my hand. So I was like, what are you, you know, she said, I'm 34 years old. And this is the first time I've been inside a cinema. My parents have been telling me since I was 0 that, like, you know, we used to go there and we used to watch.
Watching on a big screen is a different thing. You get a bigger aspect of things. And person coming from a cinematic background like me, I want to watch art films. I want to watch on a big screen, like how the person has acted, how the frame has been set, how the cinematographer just framed it. Those things you can only enjoy and kind of, you know, judge on a big screen. You cannot just watch it on your phone and say, okay, ye galat tha, ye sahi tha, because that's not true. You won't get that bigger aspect. Why do people go to theatre to watch the film? Why do they release it in a theatre? So people at the first move, they see the bigger aspect of what they have been working on since years.
Cinema, my friend, is a very genuine form of entertainment. And as we speak, it has found way in the practice of medicine as well. As a very important, as a very practicable tool in propagating the idea of mental wellness. A real therapy is a reality.
Opening a cinema is not enough. This is kind of saying that जबरदस्ती पिक्चर नहीं दिखा सकती किसी को बैठकर. आप नहीं बोल सकते सुनो बैठो पिक्चर देखो. You can't, you know, put a gun on somebody's head and say, hello, go and watch a movie. You have to bring that culture back. You have to work about it, around it. You have to make schools, give them education, show them make them aware of cinema, let them appreciate cinema, and tell them why it's important in life. What is the importance of cinema? And perhaps generate employment through it.
Don't think that fear psychosis, it'll take time. Like if I expect that there's going to be a mammoth rush at the cinema tomorrow, no. And I'm aware of that. I'm not saying it's not for me, it's not a business venture. Business venture is something that you would think from your head and say, this is the profit, this is the loss, and all that. But this is something which we've done from our heart.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The warship killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
With all this gear, you must be wondering if I'm climbing a mountain. Well, let me give you a wider look of this place. This is Asia's largest mountain of shame.
A mountain of waste, almost the height of the Qutub Minar.
When you enter capital cities of some of the biggest countries in the world, you don't have three garbage mountains waiting to welcome you depending on whichever side of the city you enter from.
The thing is that a lot of times we talk about landfills only when there's a fire at the landfill. You need to understand that a landfill is at fire almost throughout the year. It's only when the firefighters are not able to douse the fire is when it actually catches the nation's attention, the city's attention, or media attention.
The towering landfills worsen one of Delhi's biggest problems: pollution.
यहाँ पर आप रात को आओ, दिन में आओ, आप 1 घंटे बैठ नहीं सकते बाहर। इतनी धूल, प्रदूषण, महक, आप खाना भी नहीं खा सकते बाहर बैठ के।
Life around the landfill is a curse.
हमारे घर में जो बड़े हैं उन्हें अस्थमा के वो पेशेंट है, आए दिन उनको नेबुलाइजर लगाना पड़ता है।
डॉक्टर ने मुझे ये चीज बोला कि यहाँ का एरिया छोड़ के कहीं और चाहिए।
Delhi's garbage mountains are now a fetid symbol of the national capital's trash problem. The question is, who is to be blamed? Watch Delhi's Garbage Mountains. Streaming on News 9 Plus for the Genflix.
A very warm welcome to News 9 Mediaverse. I am Kartiki Sharma and with me is Brijesh Pandey and you are watching To The Point. Now in To The Point, we are going to bring you the ground report from Moreh. And when I use the word Moreh, I use it with deep sadness. Moreh is the pivot of India's Act East and Look East politics. Moreh is the place from which, if operational, you could drive down to Yangon, and from Yangon you can drive down to Bangkok, and from Bangkok you can drive down to Phnom Penh, and from there you can drive down to Ho Chi Minh City. It was a vision which was envisaged by P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1990s. Look East. Under Prime Minister Modi it became Act East. Now Moreh has become a ground zero of a fight between the Meiteis and the Kukis. In 1993, there was a huge fight, violence which erupted between the Kukis and the Nagas. Now the Meiteis are involved. The whole town got ravaged. On Friday, as we were doing our coverage on Manipur, shots were being fired. Houses were being burned. Military was out and so were the militia. Claims and counterclaims took place. Today, Brijesh, I got tagged by a couple of cultural agencies saying that there are women volunteers on the other side also.
Yes, and I agree with them because yesterday, in our show we discussed this as well.
And since, we have shown the India Core video in which the Mera Paibis were there, I was told that, you had similar institutions run by women on the other side. The Kukis are also doing that. So I just want to say, as the editor, that I take the full responsibility of the coverage and we take no sides. We hold no